On Thursday, the United States dropped the largest non-nuclear bomb ever used in human history of combat in the eastern provinces of Afghanistan. The White House spokesman Sean Spicer said that the bomb, which is called the mother of all bombs, was dropped on a network of caves and tunnels used by Islamic State in eastern Afghanistan. The Pentagon informed the media that the 21,600-pound bomb was dropped in the Chin district of Nangarhar province, now close to the border with Pakistan. And Trump has described the bombing as a very successful mission so far. No civilian casualty has been reported, and it is not clear how much damage the device has done. Now, the bomb was dropped in Afghanistan's Nangarhar province in Nangarhar, which is near the border of Pakistan, and it has been reported that over 200 U.S. airstrikes have been done in the Nangarhar in 1 year. The bomb was dropped in Afghanistan's Nangarhar province, and the Pentagon has confirmed that it is a 21,000 lb weapon, which is dubbed as the mother of all bombs, and the blast radius is believed to be over 300 meters. It is the very first time the weapon has been used in combat. And here are some facts about the mother of all bombs. It was first tested by the United States in March 2003 before the Iraq War, and it is the largest non-nuclear weapon in existence. The MOAB costs around $16 million per unit. The US has spent $314 million on this explosive, and Russia claims of having a 4 times stronger father of all bombs. And US has in the past considered MOAB as great for a strike on Iran by United States.
At around 7 p.m. local time in Afghanistan last night, the United States military used a GBU-43 weapon in Afghanistan. The GBU-43 is a large, powerful, and accurately delivered weapon. We targeted a system of tunnels and caves that ISIS fighters used to move around freely, making it easier for them to target U.S. military advisors and Afghan forces in the area.
Meanwhile, former President of Afghanistan Hamid Karzai is among the first to condemn U.S. bombing Afghanistan. In his tweet, he has accused the United States of misusing Afghanistan as a testing ground for its new and dangerous weapons. We are now joined by Glenn Carl, a former intelligence officer from the United States. Glenn, a very good morning to you. Can you tell us what this means with regards to the impression that Donald Trump wants to show to the world?
Well, I think it's a natural thought to have to associate the attack in Syria with this dropping of the bomb. I think it's true or accurate to assess a change in the posture of what Trump characterizes as counterterrorism steps, meaning that he is more inclined to use violence without committing large numbers of troops to a country. So continued counterterrorism strikes with fewer rules of operation that would protect or take care to avoid casualties on civilians and the use of force when not necessary. There's under Obama, there was great care taken, started by General McChrystal in Afghanistan a dozen years ago, actually, to attempt to weave cultural concerns in the actions of special forces. And I think that Trump finds that to be weak and will not hesitate to use force. However, I'm not certain that the use of the bunker buster, the mother of all bombs device in Syria is directly a message. I think that it was probably chosen, it being the weapon, chosen with some care by the military for a specific operation.
Right, and what impact could this have on U.S. and its, other Asian or Middle East relations?
Well, that's a good question, too. What comes to mind first, I think, are two things, Syria, of course, and North Korea. I think everyone anticipates, and now we're finding that Trump is, as I said, more inclined to use violence in a less fettered way than Obama was. Although President Obama was very aggressive in his use of drones and special operations and counterterrorism operations. So I think that is the inclination we all have as part of an assessment. I am inclined to view this attack, bombing in Afghanistan from a U.S.-Afghan perspective, which is that the Taliban and other insurgents have increased their control. The government in the past year, the government's control of Afghan territory has fallen from 63% a year ago to, I think, about 53, maybe 57 now, and this trend is disturbing. In the area, Nangarhar province, where the bomb was dropped, some faction that claims to represent ISIS, although I'm skeptical of the direct ties, nonetheless, they are certainly inspired by them. To what extent they're controlled, I don't know. There were, it was estimated by the United States and the Afghan authorities, 2,000 of these fighters a year ago. We have frankly killed 1,200 of them, and they are reeling from the American and Afghan attacks, and this is part of that. So I think being more aggressive in that theater is certainly something we can conclude. The larger messages, possibly, but I don't think those are the main intentions.
Well, President Donald Trump's, war on terror, and then this just comes days after launching 59 Tomahawk missiles into Syria. Why target Afghanistan?
Well, I don't think he's singling Afghanistan out. I think the trends have been, the trends have been disturbing for a long time, well before Trump went to the Oval Office in Washington. General Nicholson, the current commander of the American forces in Afghanistan, called for an increase in American troop presence by several thousands, which would be about a 50% increase from the current levels of about 8,300, I think that it is. And there have been special forces operations ongoing there without stop. As I say, the trends have been disturbing. So why now? This is, I think, part of the effort for the United States to, with the Afghan government, to get back on top of the dynamic of the flow of the narrative of events, if possible. And part of that now with Trump in office is a less constrained use of violence. This gets to a theory of how to fight terrorism that is a significant issue. This goes back 20 years in the United States context. How does one do this? How does one combat terrorism? Do you use violence ruthlessly, or is the violence and the terrorism a symptom? And that's a fundamental difference, and clearly Trump is inclined to the position that one can fight one's way to success or kill one's way to success. I think this has been clearly demonstrated not to be the case. I'm not in any way a pacifist. There are people who need to be opposed with violence, and special forces as a central role in this. But the change in the philosophy of counterterrorism to one that is more militarized, I think, is clear in Trump's statements and now in his actions.
Also, Glenn, the mother of all bombs, as it is called, what do we know more about this bomb, and why was it never used in the past? Because we know it was built in 2003.
Yes, I think it was developed for several reasons. It's a bunker buster. It's a mountain destroyer, almost, really. It was designed to get where conventional explosives were not strong enough in the caves of Afghanistan, but also in the potential nuclear facilities that are hardened in Iran. It wasn't used, my understanding is, because it was developed at about 2003, and also for Iraq was part of the objective. The war ended very quickly in Iraq, and it was decided it was unnecessary to use for the kind of threat that the United States was facing in Afghanistan from 2003 on. They do cost $16 million apiece. Apparently, the United States has in its arsenal a dozen or 15 or so at present, and it was considered unnecessary to use at this point. Other mountain bunker buster bombs have been used of somewhat less power, but in this instance, I think that it's, and I don't know, but I think that it is most likely that it was based on a recommendation of the military commanders in the theater rather than as a gesture to send a message by Trump, who would be happy to send a message, but probably in response to a recommendation for a specific operation.
Also, Donald Trump had said in the run-up to the elections that the U.S. would not get involved in the wars of other nations, but now he has gotten involved in so many theaters of war in Syria and Afghanistan and most probably in North Korea next.
Yes, well, you're pointing out one of the almost infinite number of utter contradictions and things that have come out of Donald Trump's mouth. It is alarming. It's incoherent. You can't go to opposite directions simultaneously and get very far, at least without being incoherent. And this is an inconsistency. It's hard to wage a ruthless war without engaging in violence. And I don't mean to sound stupid, but this is the contradiction that on this specific point, and there are many others, we find in Trump's rhetoric. You can't fight terrorism militarily without using the military. And so Trump has taken office and is discovering apparently that the United States has 8,500 soldiers in Afghanistan in a 17-year-old war, and has thousands of soldiers in the Middle East, and is engaged in a war, and has been under President Obama. Obama was denounced as being pusillanimous, and in fact he was engaging in special forces operations regularly, in drone strikes regularly, in supporting with artillery and aircraft especially, all the time, Iraqi and Kurdish forces, and striking on its own, acting with coalition members, all of that in Syria. And yet he was considered to have been insufficiently martial in his approach when he decided quite sensibly that it's easy to break the country, but if you do, then what happens next? And occupying a country where there is no realistic replacement for the number of factions is a recipe for a far greater disaster than the United States encountered in Iraq. Yeah, and yet now Trump is discovering all of these realities.
Also, Glenn, this region bombed is close to Afghanistan's border with Pakistan. So do you think this should also be seen as a message to elements in Pakistan that back terrorism?
Well, if a message is conveyed indirectly that way, it's a pretty strong indirect message, certainly, as you point out. That would, I think, be welcomed and by the United States. The United States has, for all the years that I have had anything to do with counterterrorism, for decades, has dealt with the dilemma of Pakistan, which is they are indispensable in our efforts to get on top of Al-Qaeda and now the Taliban and various other jihadists. And yet at the same time, we do know, although Pakistan denies it, that ISIS, Pakistan's intelligence service, has periodically worked quite closely, if not actually created some of these factions that conduct terrorist attacks. And I was hardly unique, would try to tell my Pakistani counterparts that they were creating a Frankenstein that would come and possibly destroy them. But they have found it, as you know, as I think all Indians know better than most people, they found it, they believe in their interest as a lever against a stronger power on their border.
Right. Thank you, Glenn, for joining us on the broadcast this morning.